for
Police officers, sworn heroes, or the public's #1 enemy. For everyone in this room, your answers will be different. But unfortunately, for most of the American public, they have a strong distrust in the police force. And up until last year, I would have agreed. I would have told you that every officer is arrogant and believes that they are above the law. And then I started my internship at the Golden Police Department. And it was the best experience I've ever had. The officers were amazing. And the best part, they were people. People who love watching New Girl on their lunch breaks. People who take their 6-year-old daughter to wrestling practice so she can wrestle with her younger brother and her older brother before he leaves for college. People who just got married. People expecting their first kid. People who always have fruit snacks on them, even during SWAT operations. So today, I hope to break down the factors that contribute to the distrust in law enforcement in this country, and how we can approach change. How the world presents stereotypes to us has a heavy reach on us on how we also look out into the world. As children, we are taught to trust police officers, that they are the one stranger in a uniform we can recognize to go to for trust. And while this is argued to be a very black and white form of looking at police officers, I think it is important in a world full of stranger danger for our young children. However, when we transition from cartoons and children's books into live action movies, there's a drastic change. A change from which we transition from friendly heroes to dirty cops. And while no one is willing to talk about this change, I do believe that it hinders the ideas that our children are still forming about law enforcement, especially because parents are not always abiding by the PG ratings. But another factor that leads to this distrust is the militarization of police forces over the last 50 years. And while there are many factors that contribute to this, the biggest one is the creation of the SWAT team. The SWAT team was created in the 1970s after America was introduced to its first mass shooting on a college campus in Texas in 1966. The SWAT team was built and trained to handle situations that normal officers wouldn't be able to. And in this time of struggle, we started to see higher crime levels, and we began to see the war on drugs arise. And as President Reagan pushed for politicians to make a change, the police commissioner and mayor of New York City came up with a zero-tolerance policy that pushed for harsher punishments to petty crimes. And along with this, they encouraged police officers to become more aggressive and round up large groups of people, especially people who are in minorities. And these minorities are still being affected today, with the Black Lives Matter movement still being so prevalent in our society, which I can't argue. There is a problem. But the point of the fact is that not every officer is out to get a minority. Not every officer will act with extreme violence to small situations. Officers' reputations are harshly tarnished by the news media. And it's so unfair to see this happen to them because we can't have equal representation in the news because police officers doing a good job is just their job. I had the opportunity of seeing the Golden Police Department Award ceremony. In it, one of my favorite officers was given an award for arriving on scene to a gunshot victim, and he immediately started taking life-saving action. When the medics arrived, they found that they were one man short, so the officer drove the ambulance to the hospital. Isn't that an amazing story? Did you hear it in the news? No? It's unfortunate. But let's go back to 1980. where the zero tolerance policies were gaining a lot of traction across America, and places already predisposed to crime like New York City, St. Louis, and LA. In these areas, the SWAT teams were being used for low-level narcotics busts, and the police officers were becoming more and more aggressive. And in this, when police officers entered communities that were often having arrests, citizens began getting a little uncomfortable. And when more officers arrived for backup, riots broke out. And as riots were tearing apart cities in California, one was not touched: San Diego. In San Diego, prior to the rioting, police officers were entering every neighborhood doing normal patrols. They were not seen as an occupying army entering neighborhoods, but rather just workers doing their job. They were known within the communities, and more than that, they were a part of these communities. But the officers were still feared across America. Citizens were fearing them. And that is the biggest problem police officers face today. They have become a them. There is an us versus them battle that should not exist, because officers were not meant to be apart from the communities. And when they are separated from the communities, more problems arise. So, in San Diego, officers were making normal rounds, usually in the same residence areas, so that the officers were known. This method is called community policing. This is also something that we can see in Golden, Colorado, just 15 minutes away. Officers are often patrolling the same areas, and in the spring and summer times, they are often on foot, giving the public greater access to speak to them. They are also drive with their windows down, wave, and smile at the residents, creating a friendlier face of the Golden Police Department. This allows a more approachable police department. This allows people from the public to come in and talk to them about any problems. Maybe they feel that their park is unsafe at night. Maybe their neighbor's car has a broken window and they haven't seen them in a couple of days. This built relationship of trust allows for greater communication between both the public and the police department, putting it on everyone to create a safer place to live. In community policing, law enforcement officers are not seen as only enforcers, but peacekeepers, used as a preventative measure from crime. As they are seen often walking through the neighborhoods, it is suggested that crime has dropped to a lower rate. However, it has also been said that community policing only works in areas with predominantly white and middle-class families, as these are the people who would not mind seeing police officers generally walk around their neighborhood. But I do believe that in all cities, there can be small steps towards this communication and trust being rebuilt. As I stated before, more officers could be patrolling the area on foot. Officers could simply wave at residents as they're doing their normal patrolling. But I believe that the biggest advantage that community policing has is humanizing our officers. And in this, we can see them as people and not as a uniform. Because when we see the uniform, we expect them to be better than ourselves, but they are human, and they make mistakes. And they have mental and physical stress put on them every single day from their job. But they're expected to be more, and so when a shortcoming happens or a mistake happens, they're less likely to come forth and speak about it because they expect a tidal wave of anger to hit them. But if we were to become more educated on this, we could potentially greet them with forgiveness. Make it easier for them to come forward and speak about their shortcomings. Police officers do not think they are above the law. They are merely enforcing it. And they should not be marked by one individual's poor actions. We should be understanding of human error and realistically evaluate situations where it occurs. But moreover, we should accept, moreover, I urge us to become more educated on news stories. Get all of the details. Don't just read the titles and make wild accusations. I am guilty of this as well. But we have to do better. We have to become more educated on the stress that police officers face every single day. We have to become more educated on the constant training they go through to protect us, like a 10-hour training on active shooter situations, to protect us and siblings and children all across the nation. And we must urge our communities and cities to make our officers more available to us through community policing methods. And in this, we can start a greater conversation. And we can create a trusting community where we speak to one another to create safer places to live. Police officers are people. They're people whose kids go to our schools. Are not to be feared. And there's so many things in this world that tarnish their reputation. So please, smile, wave, start a conversation. Thank you all for your time.